Hey, folks. Today's sponsor, one of them, sunsetlakesabadeh.com. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. They have their special Valentine's Day sale going on right now.
Get yourself in the mood.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Celebrate Valentine's Day by buying yourself some Sunset Lake Sabadeh edibles. That's right. You can save 30% on all Sunset Lake Sabadeh edibles. That includes their fudge, their coffee, and all of their gummies, including the full spectrum THC that has a little bit of Sabadeh and THC in it. Or you can just get the sour Sabadeh gummies, or the ones with mushrooms, not those kind of mushrooms. The kind that this is a focus gummies with Sabadeh, lion's mane, and cordyceps. They have some relaxed ones with ashwagandha. They have some sleep gummies with melatonin, helps you sleep. And then, of course, the wide array of other gummies. And the fudge is delicious. And the coffee is my weekend brew. Just use the code SWEET at checkout, but you better hurry because you only have 36 hours almost exactly to order these gummies. Treat yourself and your loved ones. You can take a picture off the website, like a screen grab, and say, "This is the gift I got you on top of everything else." Treat yourself and your loved ones to some tasty Sabadeh this Valentine's Day. Head to sunsetlakesabadeh.com. Place your order before February 14th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. See their website for terms and conditions. Great company, movement partners, sunsetlakesabadeh.com. Use the coupon code SWEET at checkout, and you'll get 30% off. This is the time to load up on those gummies, I'm telling you. All right, now time for the show.
With Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Tuesday, February 13th, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Luke Goldstein, writing fellow at the American Prospect, on New York's third special election. If it was up to me, they'd both lose. But that shan't pass. Meanwhile, speaking of pass, Senate passes billions in military aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. Now off to the House, where Mike Johnson apparently wants some type of border enforcement redo. Speaking of the House to vote again in an attempt to impeach DHS Secretary Mayorkas this evening. We'll see how well they count their votes this time. Trump endorses the chair of the North Carolina Republicans and his daughter-in-law to run the RNC. 100,000 flight attendants picket today at over 30 major airports. Joe Biden boldly issues another limp warning to Israelis about an attack on Rafah. Inflation creeps up a little more than expected as housing drives the uptick. And the Republican Senate Election Committee endorses Kari Lake in Arizona. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. It is
Newsday Tuesday.
Newsday Tuesday, says Emma Vigland. Welcome. Thanks again for being here. This special election is actually both a depressing one and an interesting one that is taking place in New York. And we should say it's still snowing outside, I think. I can't see the window from here.
It's still snowing.
Tiny little window we have.
I like my view today.
Yeah. But more importantly, it is snowing. It is a coastal storm. And there is snow, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches.
Yeah.
At this point,
it might be a little worse out
in this
Long
district.
Island.
And it's also, we'll talk to Luke more about this district, but it's interesting because it's both sort of like, I don't know if I would call it suburban Queens, but less densely. I mean, it's more
like single family housing Queens.
Yeah. I don't know how to express that. It's not quite suburban, but it's not the dense sort of like
far east Queens, and then like the North Shore Long Island suburbs.
And so aside from all the other dynamics that's playing out in this race, Democrats tend to vote early voting more than Republicans. And so that also could be playing into this. But there's going to be a lot read into this race. And I think it's going to be difficult to sort of assess what's happening there. But how it's read into ends up implicating how Democrats and Republicans will run. Although I think how the Republicans are going to run is pretty cast at this point. But how they'll run in the fall. And this is also coming at a time where there is increasing concern about Joe Biden's electability because of either his age or his perceived age, or the issues surrounding his age, and his loss of support from young voters, in no small part because of what's happening in Gaza. In many respects, that might be sort of like the last straw. But we'll talk to Luke Goldstein about that. In the meantime, let's go to see what our friends at Fox and Friends are up to.
Let's.
It's been a while. I
see a lot of Fox on this show, but I haven't seen a single friend. But anyway.
Yeah, I understand. Last night, and it was late. I don't know why they did it so late. Were they worried about the snow? Like, why did they?
I don't know.
They pulled an all-nighter last night in the Senate to vote on they call it foreign aid. It's really foreign military aid for the most part.
There's a little bit of money for Gaza, Ukraine, humanitarian stuff, but dwarfed by like the billions we're giving to Israel as they massacre civilians.
Right. And you'll recall that a week ago, they tried to roll out this bill with a border deal that was so dead on arrival that James Lankford, senator from, where is he from? Oklahoma, had to go into the witness protection program for daring to introduce it, or even introducing the idea of introducing it. And so the bill went away, and they've come back with just the straight foreign aid bill. It's unclear what's going to happen in the House because Mike Johnson says he wants a border.
Which is amazing because he had that, right? He had the border bill in his hands, but Trump just says you can't pass anything because they'll get, even though the border bill was as far right as like the Republicans honestly could have possibly hoped for under a Democratic president if you actually were a true believer in what you say about the border. But because Trump says don't give Biden anything ahead of the election, Johnson follows suit.
And this immigration stuff is going to come up in this New York 3rd special election. But The interesting thing here, too, is that I think Mike Johnson realizes, and so don't the conservatives in the House, they just played themselves on some level, because the whole point, supposedly, of why Matt Gaetz wanted to get rid of McCarthy, even though we know it was really because of the ethics committee. But the whole sort of like political story that we were told was that the conservatives are going to win and they're going to stop the funding of Ukraine. And they still may, but it's going to be hard considering that they got over 2/3 of the Senate to vote for this. Here is Fox and Friends describing this whole dynamic.
Speaker Johnson said he was slamming this package for excluding the border security provisions. The Senate bill, he said, is silent on the most pressing issue facing our country, talking about the border. He says he's not going to bring it to the floor if it passes the Senate, which it did, but they could find a way to go around the Speaker.
Right. And he says the reason that the House is not going to bring it up is because it needs border security stuff, which ironically was in the Senate bill last week. But of course, that was kicked to the curb because a bunch of Republicans bailed on it because Donald Trump didn't like it. According to Punchbowl this morning, House leadership believes that they cannot bring this particular Senate bill to the House floor if Johnson wants to remain Speaker. In other words, if they bring it up in the House, he will be gone.
Speaker.
So Johnson won't bring it up, but there has been is it the motion to commit, or there is a parliamentary procedure where these things with enough sign-offs can be brought to the bill without the Speaker doing it, and there are enough Republicans apparently who want
petition.
What's that?
It's
the discharge petition.
Discharge petition. Yeah.
And there are enough Republicans who want to do so. This is not something we've heard that much about because it's pretty rare where you get enough of members of both parties to essentially go around a Speaker. But the Republican Party is fractured enough along sort of like Coke and Pepsi lines. I don't want to say this is about ideology because at the end of the day, it really isn't. It really isn't just about which team they're on. But so that's where we stand today. In the meantime, and we'll get to this after we talk to Luke, the Joe Biden has really, really sternly said to the Israelis, "You shouldn't do this."
Yeah.
Is sort of everything is sort of like weirdly proxy now. It's very strange what's going on.
Bizarre.
It's unclear if well, we'll talk more about that there. I don't want to get into it. I think if we say one word, we're going to fall down the rabbit
Truly,
hole,
but it is notable though that
we're doing that.
Yeah, but just real quick, notable that there were only 3 Democrats that voted against this package, and it was Bernie Sanders, it was Jeff Merkley, and Peter Welch. Even the Democrats that spoke out strongly, including Chris Van Hollen, who spoke about the war crimes. I know we'll get into it, but he voted yes because of Ukraine funding, and that is becoming a problem here, where there's a section of Democrats that are just like so pro-Ukraine that they're willing to cede giving billions of dollars to a country committing a genocide.
There's, without getting into it,
Yes.
there is at least a theory that the memorandum that the White House issued last week, reminding people of the Leahy rule, gives them the opportunity to stop that money from flowing if they want to afterwards. Now, whether they're going to want to or not is a different question, but that's at least a mechanism to provide some of those senators cover. With no more said,
I'm shutting up.
We will be talking to Luke Goldstein, writing fellow at the American Prospect, about this special election in New York's 3rd district. It's an important one, based upon both, both as a foreshadowing and as maybe a self-fulfilling prophecy in terms of what we see over the next 8 months. But first, a couple of words from our sponsors today. I go on and on about this. quite a bit because of I just heard this stat about how much of the world's plastic has been produced just in the past 10 years. And of course, you all remember that huge island that exists in the Pacific, just full of plastic garbage. And the amount of like sort of plastics that, they're finding basically now in everyone's body. And also, I cannot stand carrying huge, massive jugs back from the supermarket because I'm old and it gets tiring. And so you should do what I did, which is switch to Earth Breeze. Earth Breeze right now has a great deal for our audience. You can subscribe to Earth Breeze and save 40%. Go to earthbreeze.com/majority to get started. Want to thank Earth Breeze for supporting our show. But more importantly, I want to thank Earth Breeze for making it possible for me to do a bunch of laundry by using a packet that is about the size of this paper. Maybe it's like this. Maybe it's like this. Like I fold it in half like this. It's crazy. Earth Breeze has what they call sheets. They're sheets. They've made laundry detergent into just sort of like sheets. They're a little more stiff than like, what you used to with the fabric softeners, but they're sheets. They slide into underneath my sink, just like this.
Wow.
And here you've got, I can't even remember how many are in there, but it looks like a dryer sheet, but it's a little more stiff. It is ultra concentrated laundry detergent. It couldn't be easier. All you got to do, you take the sheet, you throw it in with your laundry, or you put it in, like if you got a top loader, you put it in, there's the directions. It's easy. There's no measuring, no mess, and best of all, no massive plastic jug. And also, I will also say no dripping, because I've never had a plastic jug of that stuff that doesn't drip down the sides. I know they've got a special thing, but it doesn't work. Earth Breeze fights everyday stains and odors, gives you an amazing clean every time. It is dermatologist tested, very important for me. That's one of the things I like about Earth Breeze, because I have sensitive skin. Hypoallergenic and free of bleach and dyes. So it is perfect for every load I have, from bedding to towels, even my delicates, like my sweater here.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
That's hard to find.
Best part is you're never going to run out of detergent again, because Earth Breeze's flexible subscription, you could adjust, pause, or cancel at any time. There's no hidden fees, no penalties. You save, you ready for this, a whopping 40% when you subscribe. Oof. Shipping is always free. Echo Chics are packaged in a slim cardboard envelope that saves you an indescribable amount of space. An indescribable amount of space. You would have enough Earth Breeze laundry detergent for like 14 years to meet the same size as, I don't know, I just made that up.
I mean, I hear you though,
it's
especially
crazy.
In New York. You need that space.
Yes. And,
or
anywhere. I mean, frankly, for that matter. But switching to Earth Breeze won't only make laundry day easier for you, but it's also going to be easier on the planet. Earth Breeze has donated over 100 million loads of laundry and counting to those in need. Actually, those are a huge thing that for shelters. Detergent is actually a big thing that they need. Earth Breeze, and if Earth Breeze doesn't end up being the 2024 update of your dreams, you don't even have to return it. You just let them know it's not for you. You get a full refund, no questions asked.
Wow.
That's how much confidence they have in the product. Right now, our listeners can get started with Earth Breeze and save 40%. Go to earthbreeze.com/majority. That's earthbreeze.com/majority for 40% off your subscription. Honestly, it's like a revelation. I'm so, like, the amount of space I've saved is just amazing. Also, this program is brought to you by Zippix Nicotine Toothpicks. Zippix brings you a totally satisfying, convenient, and great-tasting way to curb your nicotine cravings because, ladies and gentlemen, it is time that you stop putting smoke and or vape oils in your lungs. Now you can get your nicotine fix anytime, anywhere, without having to rely on smoking or vaping. It's gross, it smells, and it is not a habit you want to carry into your future if you... You can take my word for it. Zippix toothpicks gives you an easier, healthier, and more discreet way to get your fix. They're available in 6 flavors. They have 2 different options in terms of how much nicotine, 2 milligram and 3 milligram. So you can taper off as you want to maybe use less nicotine. Zippix also, and this is huge for me because I quit smoking 17, 18 years ago, 18 and a half. Zippix offers caffeine and B12 infused toothpicks. So if you're not a nicotine user, or if you're trying to get away from the nicotine habit, you see what I'm talking about? You stop your vaping, you stop your smoking, you go to the 3 milligrams of nicotine on the toothpicks, and then you go to the 2 milligram of nicotine on the toothpicks, and then you go and to the caffeine and B12 infused toothpicks. And I still am chewing toothpicks to this day. Make your lungs happy. Try Zippix nicotine toothpicks. Ditch the cigarettes. Ditch the vape. Get some nicotine-infused toothpicks at zippixtoothpicks.com today. Get 10% off your first order by using the code MAJORITY10. That's the word majority, the number 10. MAJORITY10 at checkout. Your lungs will be glad you did. Must be 21 or older to order. Warning, nicotine is an addictive chemical. Believe me. Zip more, smoke less with Zippix nicotine toothpicks. We will put the links to both those in the podcast and YouTube descriptions, as well as on the website. And ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back with Luke Goldstein, writing fellow at the American Prospect, to talk about New York's 3rd District. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Pleasure to welcome to the program Luke Goldstein. He is a writing fellow at the American Prospect. Luke, thanks for joining myself and Emma Vigeland.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
This third New York 3rd special election is both interesting, it seems to me, in it being an assessment of where we're at, and perhaps like a self-fulfilling prophecy in some respects as to what's going to run. Tell us about the 2 people running. Let's just start with Tom Suozzi, because he's a more known commodity and not necessarily one that I particularly like. And he's the Democrat.
Sure, yeah. Right, so Tom Suozzi was the former congressman for this district, New York's 3rd. Sort of his reputation is as a pretty, moderate to conservative Democrat. 10 years ago might have been a little bit sort of more mainstream, but given the current composition of the party, is definitely, more in the kind of conservative flank. He was one of the original founders, actually, of the Problem Solvers caucus that, is, Josh Gottheimer and his cohort. And, he was a big supporter of, kind of increasing the SALT tax deduction. He's a major, kind of pro-Israel backer. He was actually visiting Israel in December, I think, when he originally got the nod for this seat, and has had some questions about his stance on abortion over the years. He was originally a backer of the Hyde Amendment, which bans the use of federal funds for abortion procedures. He's running now with, by and large, the support of reproductive rights groups, Planned Parenthood, and such. But that's kind of the questions that have dogged him.
All right, a couple of things I want to just note. He is getting DMFI money. He is getting that's the AIPAC sort of like, I guess, I don't know, front group yeah. Essentially.
Yeah, they march in lockstep.
And he's getting, he is being like a sort of like all of the, like you say, No Labels has said, given him the endorsement more or less. He is, what's interesting is twofold. One is that, and like you say, he visited Israel in the middle of the campaign, which is, they're in a special election. You take a couple of days like that, that has to be a value to you there. Who's in the New York 3rd District that going to Israel has that level of value?
Right. Well, and also just to go off of that, last night, the night before the election, he was on a call with DMFI's board doing, a kind of general, support, get out the vote. But, clearly, his campaign seems to think that this is the core constituency in the district that they have to win over. So the main thing to know about New York's 3rd District, it's actually the wealthiest district in the entire state. It's, kind of broadly.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm sort of shocked by that, but okay.
So it's parts of Queens, and then, mainly the district extends out into Long Island. It's, kind of one of these classic, suburban, upper income areas. Also has, become pretty diverse over the last, decade or so. It's about 15% Asian. There's a sizable Latino population. And, it is heavily Jewish as well. And that's, kind of, Tom Suozzi's background. He's been long time, he's been known as a pro-Israel candidate for many years now.
I'm also just struck by the idea that he's now sort of like considered more to the right than what the Democratic Party, which just gives you a notion of like where the caucus has gone, which is good in that respect. Let's talk about his opponent. And this, I think, also adds to why DMFI for him is so important, because this is that sort of like both the sort of October 7th events, I think, I don't want to say radicalized some Jewish voters, but certainly sort of like pushed support to Israel to one of their top voting things, particularly in a district like that, I think. And who he's running against seems to be putting that constituency more in play.
I mean, she literally fought in the IDF.
Yes.
Right? So.
Yeah,
tell us about
that's right. Yeah. So Mazi Pilip is the Republican candidate here. So, I mean, she's a local Republican official in the Nassau County Legislature, which is the sort of, the main county seat of this district, but very little national name recognition, obviously, until this race now. So she's a Ethiopian immigrant who originally emigrated to Israel, and as Emma mentioned, fought in the IDF, and then came to the U.S. So the main story with her is she was missing basically for several weeks, right in the middle of the campaign for kind of inexplicable reasons. But during that time, there was this big New York Times investigation into her financial disclosures that she'd submitted to the House Ethics Committee. And there were just numerous inconsistencies and some red flags that were, kind of reminiscent, obviously, of her predecessor here, George Santos. She corrected some of them and just said they were mistakes, but they're outstanding, questions still about her and her husband's financial holdings in his medical practice. And also she's a huge Bitcoin holder, which is what we learned from that disclosure.
She's also, and we should say, unlike George Santos, she's actually Jewish, not just Jewish. Right. She is and she's an Orthodox Jew, and I think she has like 5 or 6 kids too. That sort of like argument over Israel seems to be more in the forefront than one would have anticipated in really any other district in the country, it feels like.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, the politics around, Israel on October 7th are now, I think also getting tied into this whole, national fight about this, border military aid package that national Democrats and a few Republicans tried to broker. That's of course fallen apart now because Republicans decided essentially that it wasn't good to give Biden another victory in an election year. So this is going to be a huge test to see how Democrats can really, sort of use this as a talking point, or at least Tom Suozzi has on the campaign trail here. And if voters are going to, blame Republicans for that deal falling apart, immigration is cited as one of, the top concerns in this district.
Yeah.
Can you in the district in particular, can you just talk about the right wing shift on Long Island? In I know the Israeli politics are more front and center in this race, given the district and Roslin's in this district. There's a large Jewish communities in this district, right? But putting that to the side for a second, you wrote about in your piece how close Suozzi is to Jay Jacobs, the New York State Democratic basically party chair, who had spearheaded this effort to move the entire party to the right in order to win over Long Island in particular. And those results, as we saw in 2022, the New York Democrats underperformed relative to the rest of the country, almost like we could have won the House or maintained the House, potentially, Democrats, if New York Democrats didn't do so poorly. So, can you just talk about how closely he is tied to this strategy in New York of moving the party to the right?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, and it's night and day. I mean, those 4 congressional seats that New York lost in the 22 midterms is arguably what cost Democrats the House. So Tom Suozzi, along with being the chair of the state Democratic Party, is also the chair of the Nassau County party. So this race is right in his backyard, and he has devised essentially the state's whole electoral strategy around this area. Him and Suozzi go way back in Nassau County. There was this kind of unusual process for the special election where both parties kind of have this coronation of who the candidate is. And so, National Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries and Jacobs selected Suozzi. And, Jacobs has become known for what's been deemed the Long Island strategy. They've consistently endorsed sort of more moderate to conservative leaning candidates all across the state. They've been, very closely aligned with Kathy Hochul's governorship, which is, kind of punched left on a number of occasions. And that strategy to try and, win over independent and even kind of moderate Republican voters has defined their candidate selection. And it didn't really work out particularly well in the 2022 midterms. 2 Long Island seats were lost, including Santos and also New York's 4th district. And, I think the perception, especially from progressives that you'll talk to, is there wasn't really a reckoning after those losses. Jay Jacobs went on a number of talk shows and podcasts and sort of blamed the progressive flank of the party for, kind of selling the reputation of these sort of sensible moderates that lost. And they're kind of running back the strategy with Tom Suozzi. And so along with the national stakes, it's going to be a major test for Jay Jacobs and his party about if they're really up for the task in 2024 to take back the House, as Democrats think that runs through winning back Long Island.
And as big as the Israel thing is, Suozzi, my understanding is that Bill, she opened her campaign in front of a immigrant shelter. And then Suozzi shows up while she's doing her press conference and does one right after her. Basically both arguing that immigration's gone crazy, that Eric Adams is right. We're living in this sort of criminal hotbed of immigrant violence, which of course we should also say that we've recently seen the video footage and it looks like the violence is coming from the cops with immigrants who are just, I don't know, in Times Square hanging out. And so what are the implications? And we should say, I want just a couple of numbers to contextualize this. Biden won this district by, I think, 8 points in 2020. In 2022, Lee Zeldin carried this district by 12 points. That's a huge swing. I mean, obviously, it's not Biden's not on the ticket, but that's crazy because Zeldin didn't do very well in that election, broadly speaking. So, like, what is your sense of the lessons that will be taken if Swazi wins, and what will be the lessons taken if Swazi loses? Because I sort of feel like it's going to be the same lesson either way because of where the Democrats want to go.
Yeah, I think that's right. So, I mean, to compare this to the 2022 races, and this is both Santos and Lee Zeldin, as you mentioned, those races were actually somewhat more focused on these kind of parochial local issues to a certain extent. So it was about, crime in New York City, I guess, and its ramifications, as well as the migrant, busing situation, red state governors who are, sending migrants up north. This is what's unusual, I guess, about this race, or different from 2022. It's really about the southern border, the way the candidates, at least Mazi Pilip, have talked about immigration. So not something that's really close to home. The migrant busing thing is definitely, kind of in the background, but at least in recent weeks, it's been, more about, her claiming that there's this invasion at the border and that, Tom Swazi is aligned with, a sort of open borders, policy-oriented party. And again, that's where the bipartisan border deal has kind of come into play. He's tried to use this as a cudgel to go on the attack against Pilip, and we'll see if that's really an effective strategy at all. I just, one other thing to mention here is in terms of the takeaways from this race. The race is going to start all over again in 5 to 8 months. It's going to come up again in November. Whoever wins. And Democrats have put a lot of money into this race. The House Majority PAC, which is closely aligned with Nancy Pelosi and leadership, have put over $7 million to back Swazi. And if you talk to some progressives in the state of New York, they kind of are raising questions about just how much money is being spent on this one special election that's going to be redecided in several months, especially as those House leadership PACs have not been willing to really lift a finger for the progressive incumbents that are facing primary challenges from, AIPAC, other affiliates of the Israel lobby that, as we've seen from recent filings, are mainly GOP Republican donors.
Right.
So, okay. Yeah. So, but the point being here that this race, if the Democrats win it, will just basically just make it 2019 to 2013, right? I mean, it won't. Yeah. It could have an impact. I mean, Mayorkas, we just saw that Mayorkas vote, the impeachment, and it would stall, some of what the Republicans want to do, maybe arguably. But the real question is it worth that $7 million? And it sort of feels like there is a real intense sort of desire by the establishment, if you want to call it, of the Democratic Party, or at the very least, sort of the big money in the Democratic Party and the DMFI to weaponize the border. I mean, I think like the fact that it's going to be this close, in my mind, seems to suggest that there's a failure here of whatever the strategy is in the nationalized strategy, because she's out there going, the border is in crisis. And he's out there going, yes, the border is in crisis. And if I get in there, I can't really do anything about it. Like the argument that he's making about Israel right now is Israel's under threat by the Democratic Party. And so if you insert me inside the Democratic Party, I will fight that from within. I mean, this is just a bizarre type of strategy, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, just to underscore this, and to be, perfectly clear, I mean, Swazi's trying to essentially outflank his Republican candidate on the right on both these issues. He's saying the border is a problem, and Democrats wanted to do something about it, and Republicans didn't. All right, and then kind of the same with Israel. He's trying to shore up his credentials as the most pro-Israel candidate. And again, I just want to also make this other point in terms of the amount of funding that Democrats have poured into this, as you've mentioned, to really make this the centerpiece for the kind of mood setter heading into 2024. Up until the 2 weeks before the election, Democrats were outspending Republicans almost 3-1. The Congressional Leadership Fund then came in at the last minute and were sort of forced to, and spend about $2 million on digital and TV ads. But they're still outspending Republicans almost 2-1. I mean, their hand isn't necessarily being forced here. Yeah.
And it's a toss-up, right? Which is insane, because we played a clip of Mazi Pilip on this program before at the debate, reading like just a paragraph of her climate change policy, like seemingly like having before this, she had barely any public positions except pro-Israel stuff. She doesn't seem to have many core principles outside of that. And like, what's also fascinating to me about this, and I'm curious, like, Luke, if you came across this in your reporting, where is Hakeem Jeffries in all of this, given the fact that he has such close ties to the New York State Democratic Party? And is he behind the scenes, like, pushing this race and pushing money into it, despite the fact that progressives and others are raising alarm bells about it?
Oh, yeah, certainly. I mean, he's, him and Jacobs, I think, really are, from everything I've been told, are the forces behind the scenes here. I mean, one thing to note, though, that is interesting, despite, how much sort of national, interest and stakes have been kind of drummed up here, both candidates, this is Swazi and Pilip, have very publicly said they don't want the presumptive nominees of their respective parties visiting the district, which I think, just kind of goes to show how, unpopular both candidates are, especially in, swing areas. But also Hakeem Jeffries and Speaker Mike Johnson, they did visit the districts. Both candidates made a point of not publicizing those visits either. So even though Hakeem Jeffries is certainly, kind of making moves behind the scenes, the unpopularity and kind of toxicity of the brands of both political parties, so to speak, is definitely kind of, playing a role in that race.
So do you have a sense of like why the big investment if they're both like they're going to use this as a template, right? This is like they want to pretend that you can run to the right of Republicans on immigration because they're locked in now because of Biden's proposal, and they've put it on the table, and they may not actually pass it. It looks like it's not going to go anywhere legislatively, but as a plank in the platform, it's to the right almost, or they're trying to seem like it's to the right of the Republicans, and this is, I think, a fool's errand. I mean, if it doesn't work if it doesn't buy you much of a margin in a blue state, there's no reason to believe it's going to buy you a margin in a state that is already inclined to believe the Republicans on this issue anyways. Why are they pouring so much money into it? And at the same time, which presumably is because they want to set up a template or a paradigm for the national race, yet they're also afraid of nationalizing it by, mentioning a Democrat or a Republican from outside of the state, where presumably you're not going to be able to get away with that in a presidential election. It all becomes very partisan.
Yeah, no, it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, which is exactly right. They've nationalized it, and yet it's a total toss-up. So, and I think if you talk to people there, even if it's, even if Swazi wins, with a razor-thin margin, given the kind of scorched rubble that was left by Santos, that's not exactly much of a defining victory. And again, it's not just that the race is going to be redecided in several months. It's also that there was this ruling that came down from the New York Supreme Court in December that there's going to be another round of redistricting. They, ruled some of the districting from 2022, unconstitutional by the state laws. So they're going to redraw them. And Democrats were rejoicing this decision because the Democratic majority in the state legislature in Albany is going to have a substantial role. So this district is probably going to be more favorable for Democrats in November. And it just kind of makes it even less justifiable for House leadership to be, spending just a ridiculous amount of money for this special election.
Do you know what the status of that redistricting is? Because I thought it was supposed to be like we would hear something by now.
Yeah, I think there's actually supposed to be news later this week on that, but we're not exactly sure what the composition of the district will like. We just kind of assume that it's going to be probably more favorable for Democrats.
All right, and lastly, how much do you think the snow is going to impact things? Do we have a sense of what early voting has looked like? Or traditionally, I know that Democrats tend to do more early voting than Republicans in this district, but it's unclear, right?
Yeah, you and I have the same inside sources on the ground. It's snowing there in Long Island. I mean, what we do know is that Republicans yesterday were already kind of crying foul about, election interference via the weather. They'd actually called on Kathy Hochul to postpone the elections, which she did not do. But yeah, I mean, they assume at this point Democrats, and which is kind of true, that there's more early voting for Democratic voters, and they think this will kind of put Republicans at a disadvantage for day of voting. So we'll see what happens there.
Who's in charge of plowing the streets out there? That's what I want to know.
Right.
That's really one of the bigger questions.
It's Taylor Swift.
Yeah, Taylor Swift is Kelsey out there, blocking the snowplow trucks.
They do it all.
Luke Goldstein, writing fellow at the American Prospect. Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Luke.
All right, we will link Luke's piece in the Prospect at majority.fm. It focuses on that Jay Jacobs strategy. Jay Jacobs is garbage.
Oh, yeah, garbage.
And I mean, real garbage. This whole redistricting thing in and of itself is an example of something that the Democrats failed to lock up 3 years ago, I guess it was. There was a series of referendums on redistricting, and there was a couple other things. I can't even remember what they were now. And the Democratic Party was so, it had to have been deliberate on some level.
Yep.
Did such a poor job of communicating to Democratic voters in New York State the importance of these referendums. And so much of what we've seen since then is a function of that. But it seems like it's impossible to lose your job if you're in charge of the Democratic Party in New York State, unless you're like Cuomo and have multiple accusations of Me Too's or whatever it is.
Yeah. But don't worry, Jay Jacobs gets it because he is the one who's been spending all of his time blaming progressives for his own failures within the state. That's
easiest thing to do.
Yep.
And again, what's also interesting is abortion's not even mentioned in that. I mean, one of the things about 2022, if you'll remember, states where abortion could possibly be banned drove turnout for Democratic candidates. We don't see that in New York as much because there's a sense that that's not in the offing, but we'll see. Kowalski from Nebraska on the IM's Howdy Majority Report. So nothing against the interview, but I remember watching the program back in the day when Newsday Tuesday was the highlight of the week because it had that fun half flair where IMs and emails got read. It was a communal atmosphere that shattered that Monday funk. We used to be a real country is what I'm getting at. Perhaps lamenting in my older years for a time that never existed. Emma, he's distracted. Quick, Emma revolution now. Well, first off, obviously, I read that. And so I'm not that distracted. Second of all, it's been we've had guests for the past 2 or 3 weeks just because we had a backload of interviews that we wanted to do. Just take it easy. We'll return back to a regularly scheduled programming.
I mean, if we don't have some structure these days, you know what the show is going to turn into in the first hour. We will talk about Israel the entire time. I mean, at least that's what my brain drives me towards.
It is difficult not to get there. Which we're going to in just a second, actually.
Yes.
2 kids in a trench coat. Hey, guys, been a while since I've been able to listen live. I started a plumbing apprenticeship.
Whoa.
And congratulations. I was listening to the episode with Tim Heidecker, and there's a much simpler explanation as to why Dim Tool and Racist Jesus need to go to the bathroom together while the show was live. There's this white stuff you can get if you hang around Don Jr., but the banana theory is a close second. Sam Seder. Did Glenn Greenwald ever disavow George Santos, whom he originally proudly endorsed? I don't know. That's a good question.
Nice to see look at these Latinos running in the Republican Party.
Just another rando. No live chat on Twitch right now? What? I don't think that's true. Poggers.
I'm looking at
reverse poggers.
Whoa.
Yep.
What does that mean?
I don't know. Progressive physicist. Today marks 1 year since the mass shooting at Michigan State University. Seeing so much time pass after an event I lived through with no action taken is really disheartening. We need universal background checks now. I'm sorry about that. Yes, it's one of those issues that seems to be intractable at this point. Evil. Sam showing his male privilege by complaining about having to carry around massive jugs from the store. Okay, thank you. Daredevil. May we please have a shofar? May we please have a shofar and a birthday shout out for longtime viewer Choki, and a belated birthday shofar for another fan, Ex Nelio. Choki, Ex Nelio, happy birthday. Happy
birthday. And try to, help them if I can.
Cigarette Fairy. I was watching the Super Bowl and an ad for the IDF was playing while Israel was simultaneously attacking Rafah. It's disgusting, yes.
Yes. Yep.
Auntie Ducci, I have a different brand. I can attest detergent sheets are the bomb. Kid tested Brew. Huge, massive jugs getting added to the RM Brown soundboard in 3, 2, 1. Brooklyn Sue, suck it up. Some of us have to carry massive jugs everywhere we go for a lifetime. This is really... Yep.
Our audience really caught on.
Yeah, that one really stuck. I have a feeling in the Discord that must have been floated. Fart Twain. I heard he wagged his finger when he said, don't do this. Jackie C. Why we remember unlocking memory's power to hold on to what matters. Okay. Tomo Flink, happy Newsday Tuesday, folks. Regarding Trump's NATO comments, there have been plans for a while for a European defense union, which would see the EU take on a more NATO-esque dimension. When protective members combine their militaries, it produces a military that roughly the same size as the U.S. military. Yet every time that Europe has taken serious steps towards the idea, the U.S. whines so hard that Europe abandons the idea, probably for the sake of diplomatic relations. It's almost as if Europe needs to increase defense spending is a code for Europe needs to line the pockets of American defense contractors who line my pockets during every election cycle.
Well said.
Jackie C. Excellent New York Times nonpartisan piece by a neuroscientist on memory regarding wrong questions, recognition, and memory. Focus on capability. I see. Okay. The artist says ceasefire. Kowalski, snowing. It's currently 54 degrees out. The grass is turning green. The trees are budding, and I just saw the first couple of flies take flight today. I think it's safe to say this is the end. Thank you for the wonderful program, but it's over.
Like 4 weeks ago, it was about negative 40 wind chill in there.
Teacher Lauren, I love the city's getting more snow than I am upstate today. Happy snow day. Nick in Japan, as we enter the election season, I want to point out a key example of Democrats not getting credit from Republicans for implementing right-wing policies. Bill Clinton is the one who made it a crime for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. It's called the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act. The Dems' sinister master plan is to have immigrants vote for them. Why did they outlaw it?
I mean, David Griscom and I played ads from the Dole versus Clinton race, and it was all Bob Dole saying, look at this open borders lunatic, and Bill Clinton being like, yeah, right, look at how many cops we've hired.
Right.
I have been saying, and I'm not reading this anywhere, but it seems to me that what Biden's been doing for the past 6 months is all triangulation. It's just that it's not even working now.
Yeah.
Because we don't have the ability to get these legislation passed. But he's doing triangulation, except for it doesn't work because
it's not the 90s.
It's not the 90s. And as you aim for that, like, what's the point on a triangle? What is it? Is there a specific name for that? Whatever that point is, the Republicans move it. And so you just land flat.
Oh my gosh, I just had a geometry flashback.
That sorry about that.
That was the worst.
All right, let's get into this. We will take more IMs and your phone calls in just a bit. We got a couple of things to get through. What's that? No, I know. We're going to do one or two of these in the non-fun half. The Israelis are they bombed Rafah during the Super Bowl, killing at least 62 people as part of their an assault to release 2 hostages. They're killing civilians, many civilians, to rescue their civilians, essentially.
Although, let's just be clear. I don't even want to say that that's true, because when were the majority of the hostages released, Sam?
The majority of the hostages, in fact, those are the only 2 hostages I am aware of that have been actually rescued by Israel. There may have been one other, but every other hostage that has been released came in the course of a ceasefire.
Exactly.
And
so the point is just like this is the
it's almost a mockery
justification for the mass killing that they want to inflict on Palestinians. Because if they really cared about the hostages, they probably wouldn't be carpet bombing the place where the hostages are. And so, like, I will borrow from what that family of that hostage member said on Israeli TV, that this is more of the Hannibal directive than it is an earnest desire to help the hostages.
If it's 2 that they've saved, they've killed more than they've saved by far.
And we have Joe Biden, who really went on a limb the other day and said that the Israelis their response has been over the top.
Like Christmas decorations. Like, when people do too many blow up
that's over the top.
Santas, it's just a little over the top.
Sometimes when my kids are being a little bit too dramatic, that they don't want to eat a certain food, I say, you're being a little over the top. And or when folks at your table are committing genocide, and you say you're being a little over the top.
A little over the top.
And he's getting some credit, I guess, in the news media to some extent for saying, like, he finally said it was over the top. And here he is in a press conference, a joint press conference with King Abdullah of Jordan. And
he just spoke, right? But then he hands off to Abdullah. And what the king does here, like, I guess the king of Jordan is kind of representing the Palestinian interest to the public in English, which I find to be a bizarre choice. But he says things here that are directly contradictory to U.S. policy, and Biden just stands behind him. I'm not sure what the strategy is here. I really want your take.
I have to think, well, let's listen to this, but I suspect this is more about Jordan and some concerns that may exist in Jordan on some level than anything else. I think this is, Biden's gift to King Abdullah, which is you can come to the White House.
Look strong.
You can look strong and make it look like you are arguing with the president of the United States. So that the Palestinians that live in Jordan and that sentiment on the street doesn't start taking this out on you, because this whole region has become a powder keg because the Biden administration has given basically carte blanche to the Israelis. Listen.
Sorry. Mr. President, thank you for your gracious hospitality accorded to me and my delegation today. My visit today carries an added meaning, as our countries this year mark 75 years of exemplary strategic partnership. However, we had hoped we would be marking this major milestone during better circumstances in my region and the world. Unfortunately, one of the most devastating wars in recent history continues to unfold in Gaza as we speak. Nearly 100,000 people have been killed, injured, or are missing. The majority are women and children. We cannot afford an Israeli attack on Rafah. It is certain to produce another humanitarian catastrophe. The situation is already unbearable for over 1 million people who have been pushed into Rafah since the war started. We cannot stand by and let this continue. We need a lasting ceasefire now. This war must end. We must urgently and immediately work to ensure the sustainable delivery of sufficient aid to Gaza through all possible entry points and mechanisms. And I thank you, Mr. President, for your support on this. Restrictions on vital relief aid and medical items are leading to inhumane conditions. No other UN agency can do what UNRWA is doing in helping the people of Gaza through this humanitarian catastrophe. Its work in other areas of operation, especially in Jordan, where 2.3 million are registered, is also vital. It is imperative that UNRWA continues to receive the support it needs to carry out its mandate. The potential threat of Palestinian displacement beyond the borders of Gaza and the West Bank is something we view with extreme concern and cannot be allowed. At the same time, we must not ignore the situation in the West Bank and in the holy sites in Jerusalem. Nearly 400 Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank since October 7th, including almost 100 children and over 4,000 injured.
Yeah. So that was, I think, the gist of it. But he's, with Biden in right behind him, is speaking about UNRWA and its critical role that it plays in being one of the only organizations that provides shelter, medical care, just vital necessities for people in Gaza right now. And particularly as we see the escalation of right-wing Israeli activists blocking aid trucks with the basically tacit consent of the IDF from coming in to Gaza. So, I just don't understand, and I really am curious because I saw this this morning and wanted your take on what the hell Biden is doing here. Because these leaks to the press every day about how Biden is concerned and Biden's unhappy. Oh, and did you hear he called Netanyahu an asshole?
For months now, though.
A few times behind the scenes. And yet the situation continues to deteriorate to the point where we're at the risk of thousands and thousands more of starving to death. Children having lifelong issues from malnutrition at this point. It makes him look weak. Like, in the same way we're talking about his triangulation on the border, right? Where he talks about how the border's out of control and that we wanted to pass this bill, but Trump wouldn't let it happen. And Trump's the guy who's saying that the border is out of control. Well, it's like the average voter is going to say, well, Biden, you do something about it. And then when everyone's seeing this humanitarian catastrophe, all of this death in Gaza, and he trots out the king of Jordan to say what we all know, and he says things that are contradictory to Biden's actions, like UNRWA being essential and Biden defunding UNRWA, and this bill that just passed in the Senate, the supplemental aid, also defunding UNRWA. What is the strategy? Because he's afraid of hearing of Netanyahu hearing the word ceasefire come out of his mouth. So Jordan, the king of Jordan's got to say it. I don't understand what he thinks he can do. Like, I don't understand how much he can abdicate his duty at the bully pulpit, honestly. Because he thinks he can say one thing in public and another thing in private to Netanyahu and then have these leaks come out to the American people. No, dude, you just look like a weak, ineffective leader more than anything.
First off, I'm not sure that this supplemental bill defunds UNRWA. I know that the last one did. I don't know if this one does. I haven't.
I saw Prem Talker from The Intercept tweet about it this morning.
Oh, so he said it was? Okay.
But I haven't verified it outside.
The only thing I can imagine is this is a way of like trying to that Abdullah needed to do this because he needed to make it clear to a domestic audience that he was pressing the case even at the White House. It is,
you can't go to the White House without doing something like that, or people are going to get upset.
Without a doubt. There's no way that they didn't know that, and there's no way they didn't get the okay from the White House for him to do that. The reason why Biden does this is because you could look at these things and say, oh, Biden is on the verge of shutting down support for Israel. That's what these all are. These are all tea leaves. That you read the tea leaves. He's about to shut down support, and what that does is it gives Biden another couple of days. Like that's basically, this is what they did in the Iraq War too. It was always like, you know what, we're 6 months away.
Yeah.
That was the Friedman unit, or an FU, and I'm quite convinced that their strategy in making these leaks about how Biden is upset with is to basically make it seem like that it is imminent that the U.S., the administration, is going to use any tiny iota of its rather large leverage that it has with Israel. And I think that's just the idea. It is sort of like Lucy and the football type of situation. And
it's moronic.
Well, it doesn't work with people who are paying attention.
Yeah.
But
not meant to.
It is not meant to. It is meant to work with people who vaguely hear about this conflict, which is...
But if they vaguely hear about it, then why not take strong action? Because if they're low information voters, why not err on the side of looking like a strong leader than looking like somebody who needs to, have these proxies make your case?
It doesn't. I just don't think that the level of engagement from your average voter, at least this is their perspective, and I think there's probably some truth to that.
I'm sure.
It's just where they just don't even make that calculation.
Yeah, the reliance on it's complicated.
100%.
But the upside of looking strong is better than the up for a low information voter, in my opinion. And just from a purely cynical perspective, the upside of looking strong versus...
But you're assuming that it makes him look weak to a low information voter, and my point is, no. It makes him look like he's being thoughtful, and that he is not an ideologue, and that he's weighing things, he's being judicious, that there are forces that are out of his control. And then, I already think that we've gone further in just those 3 sentences than your average person who doesn't follow these things sort of interprets. That's just my sense.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
he's also a committed Zionist, so he can't look strong in that way.
It's ideological. I know. It's just, for me, you can, if we're battling over the low information voter, you can look thoughtful and then also still not alienate, the 50% of Democrats that now think that Israel is committing a genocide. There's a way, and I know the Democrats, they might need to reinvent the wheel for a second, but there's a way to do politics where you're not literally kicking your base in the teeth and saying "screw you."
That is that is a separate calculation than they're making. But and I agree with you that I don't think it's good politics, but that's what their theory is. That's the only explanation I have, aside from the fact that Biden really wants to do this, and again, this is a sort of some form of triangulation to make it seem like he's not really into doing it, but it's one of those things. It just has to happen. And, he's hearing both sides. That's why he has Abdullah there. And I mean, that's the only thing I can think of that makes any sense.
Actions speak louder than words, or hand wringing, and whether we're on a hand wringing scale of like 2 as we were in November, or we're now hand wringing at a full 10, it's still just hand wringing.
We'll get to just hand wringing in a moment when we talk about Chris Van Hollen. But let's just play this clip. This is really disturbing. We've seen clips of, we've seen clips of this, but it has become almost a movement in Israel now to prevent aid from getting in to Palestinian civilians. This is at the border. I think, do we know exactly where this is? It's at the Nitzana border crossing. And is that up at the northern part of Gaza?
It's between Egypt and Nitzana, which is technically in Israel, but it's one of the crossings that.
Okay, so it's down on the south.
Yeah, it makes
off of the Negev
into Gaza.
Okay,
there.
And so this is where, and I imagine some of this is aid that's coming via Egypt and must cross into Israel here or something. And but there are many Israelis who have traveled down there to basically have a Burning Man / let's starve Palestinian children festival. There's footage of DJs setting up and doing trance music. I think it's trance at 1/16th, and then they get out and then they basically lay down in front of vehicles trying to bring in what meager aid there is for a starving population. One where non-governmental aid organizations say they have never seen anything worse. Look at this line of cars. There's a lot of vehicles there.
It's a sick country right now. I mean, the level of radicalization in the Israeli public cannot be overstated, and all the pressure has to come from outside because, the footage of them partying was deeply disturbing as well. As, how you can feel joy in that moment, as that just mere miles away there are children with no legs and no parents, thousands and thousands. This is our tax dollars at work. We've heavily militarized and emboldened the Israeli population and their government without any international recourse, and so they feel that they are operating with total impunity.
We've spent decades pathologizing the people that these people are obstructing aid to. This is a footage of those people dancing, and yeah. And I can't help but think about what's going on at our own southern border, though. We have these exact same psychos developing this exact same impulse, and it's we have a quarter way into this century, the dark images of what it could look like popping up right in front of us with this sort of stuff, like the fortress at the borders and racism and standing in the way of whether it's Palestinians or whether it's migrants at the southern border. I mean, it's acting
We're
as if
in a
they're
moment. We're in a moment where we're beginning to reckon with the concept of militarized borders and nationalism and what that actually brings upon a society. Now, Israel is so much smaller. It's such a newer country. The level of militarization and extremism there has been accelerated to a degree, and of course, the United States is just so vast. But like, there are all these other European nations are also undergoing this as well, with the rise of these nationalist, anti-migrant sentiment within their conservative parties and nationalist parties. And it's only going to get worse as climate change continues to ramp up and migration due to climate-related disasters continues in countries that are less susceptible to the worst effects of climate change, like the global south. So like Israel's a very extreme example of a broader kind of international I think it's issue that we're going to be confronting over the next few decades about what it means to like to have equitable societies when there's more transience and more migration all throughout the world.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing just a rise of nationalism, authoritarianism, and fascism, and this is one feature of it. I mean, it's not. I think it's less about the sharpness of Joe Biden's mind and more about the situation that he confused the Mexican border and the Gazan border with Egypt. I think there should have been a little bit more read into that rather than just like, oh,
why are those two concepts
fuddy-duddy?
Why are those swimming in that brain right next to each other?
Exactly. All right, we're going to take a break. Head into the fun half. The number is 646-257-3920. We will turn on the phones in a minute or two when we get in there. Folks, it's your support that makes this show possible. We need your support. We can't do it without you. Go to jointhemajorityreport.com. We are coming up on the 20th anniversary of this show existing as a ongoing enterprise. The first Majority Report was actually in 2003, in 2 hours on Tom Sharpling's best show on WFMU, and it basically was just me. I went over to the studio in New Jersey, brought John Benjamin to do the opening. Janine Garofalo was a guest on that program, and I also sort of like attacked some unwitting poor guy who was the weekend Fox and Friends guy who'd been on there for just a couple of weeks and didn't know better. At that point, like the idea of going on to a radio show and someone yelling at you from left of where you were or about the war was so almost unimaginable for anybody. And then a year later, on March 31st, 2004, this program launched on Air America Radio. So we'll be doing a little bit of a celebration, but in the meantime, you can help this show thrive and survive by becoming a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, in the coming weeks, I think, it's going to be soon. Cedar Seeds. It's that time of year, folks.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. For spring is coming, and that means it's time to get your seedlings going. And the beautiful thing about cannabis seeds is that they do not contain any THC, and therefore they can be mailed through the mail, according to the federal government.
Well done.
So we will have an announcement on that, and we haven't started to ship yet, or we haven't started to take orders, but we will soon. Also, JustCoffee.coop, the longest sponsor of this show. Their sponsorship actually predates it. Goes all the way back to Break Room Live, the show that Mark Maron and I did in our swan song at Air America. JustCoffee.coop, fair trade coffee and hot chocolate. And of course, they featured the Majority Report blend and the WTF blend. Okay. But there's other blends there too. Check it out. JustCoffee.coop. Use the coupon code majority. Get 10% off. Emma, ESPN.
Well, we talked about that Super Bowl. You know, Joe Biden getting the pre-planned victory. The Chiefs ended up winning. I spoke about like what we're seeing with Patrick Mahomes. We're witnessing history and living through it at this very moment. Debated what Kyle Shanahan did in overtime, the decision that he made, and if that guy's just cursed. YouTube.com/ESPN show. I should also say on Thursday we're having a very special episode because I won finally this competition with Bradley over the course of the NFL season against the spread with our picks. Bradley will be
It came down to the
drinking.
Super Bowl?
It came down to the Super
Wow.
Bowl, and I won by one game. And Bradley would have won, but the over didn't hit by a half point. It was 47.5. So now Bradley has to drink a lot of disgusting things on camera on Thursday. YouTube.com/ESPN show. I'm so happy it wasn't me 2 years in a row.
Matt.
Yeah, Left Reckoning tonight. Igor Kotkin talking about some OAN guy, Tucker Carlson, interviewed Vladimir Putin. We're going to be breaking down that. And yeah, check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning. Oh, yeah, become a patron, at least for a little bit, because we lost all of our revenue because we talked about Joe Rogan with Aaron Brown last week. And I don't know if our channel's
Wait, what?
So we talked about Joe Rogan, and Joe, maybe our channel's big enough to eat it when he just claims the copyright for that stuff. But if those
He
clips,
claimed copyright?
yeah,
Spotify did?
no. On YouTube, Joe Rogan Enterprises or whatever, they claimed the monetization for our episode last week where we talked about him and.
Did you play a bunch of footage?
Yeah, we did play a bunch of footage.
Why isn't it fair use?
That's a good question. I think because YouTube wants to give the money to Joe Rogan instead.
Well, didn't they do? Isn't
You
that
know,
a
it's
part of his
probably
new
because
deal?
you're smaller, but we should talk about that. See
Yeah.
if we can't. He's going to be back on YouTube soon.
Apparently, RM has that same problem when he does Rogan stuff. So
Really?
free speech guy. You'd think you wouldn't want to shackle it with your raw
Does he need more money?
capital power,
Has he
but
just got a
he needs more money for all that
$250
fact checking they got to do
Yeah.
over there.
Yeah, I guess so. All right. Well, we should discuss. But in the meantime, go support Left Reckoning. Folks, we will see you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Cedar! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs that look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males
psych. Fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em. Fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back.